The roar of thousands shook the steel ribs of the stadium, but one heartbeat stood still. The dog's sudden halt was unnatural, like a predator catching a scent that the rest of the world couldn't sense. Its ears twitched against the vibrating air, its chest expanded with a sharp breath, and its paws pressed firmly into the concrete. Around it, flags waved, chants climbed higher, and children clapped in rhythm to the game's drumbeat. None noticed that in this vast ocean of humanity, a single creature had locked onto something unseen. The handler felt the tension through the leash like an electric wire. Muscles coiled, breath shortened. He knew this wasn't random hesitation. It was instinct, sharpened through years of training, whispering louder than the deafening crowd. Something was out of place. Somewhere in the chaos, a hidden danger waited. The handler's eyes scanned where the dog stared, but nothing unusual stood out. Just a blur of jerseys, painted faces, and vendors balancing trays of soda. Yet his body reacted before his mind did, a trained reflex triggered by the dog's stillness. He adjusted his grip, bracing for sudden movement, eyes narrowing through the flickering stadium lights. The handler had seen this before, in training fields where silence preceded discovery, where a wag of a tail meant lives saved. Around them, laughter echoed, and brass instruments from the marching band pierced the night, drowning subtle cues only he could interpret. The crowd roared for a touchdown, but his pulse quickened for a different reason. To everyone else, it was just noise. To him, it was the signal of an approaching storm, hidden inside celebration. Something demanded attention, and he trusted the nose beside him more than sight.
Time thickened as the game surged forward, but in the handler's world, seconds stretched long and fragile. The dog's nostrils flared again, its body rigid, tail frozen. The handler crouched low, straining to catch even the faintest sign. Sweat dripped down his neck, though the night air was cool. The chants of 50,000 fans turned into a distorted blur in his ears, muffled under the pounding rhythm of his heart. Somewhere close, closer than anyone wanted to believe, an anomaly lay waiting. The canine pulled once, sharply, then steadied, head lowered toward the crowd's tide. The handler inhaled, his lungs filling with heavy air. The leash between them felt less like fabric and more like destiny's tether. Nobody around them noticed. Nobody paused their joy. Suspense thickened invisibly, suspended like a razor above the cheering masses, and the dog stood as its only anchor to safety. The stadium thunder continued, but beyond its walls, the night sang a different song. Blue and red lights sliced through the darkness, washing over concrete and steel. Sirens wailed in sharp bursts, cutting through the muffled roar inside. Security vehicles lined the outer perimeter, a sudden fleet of urgency invisible to the celebrating crowd. Radios crackled, boots struck pavement, and voices barked clipped orders into the thick night air. Beyond the glass doors, chaos existed, but it was contained, disciplined, focused. The world inside was frozen in bliss, while outside it trembled on the edge of crisis. In the shadows, the dog sat quietly, its chest heaving, eyes fixed on the path it had traced. The handler's grip was firm, his gaze steady, yet a silent question burned between them. How close had the threat been, and how many lives had just been balanced?
Gloved hands lifted the object with precision, its edges sealed and carried like a serpent coiled in silence. Security teams formed a barrier, their movements smooth, rehearsed, void of panic. The object vanished into an armored case, whisked away under flashing lights. Protocol unfolded with exacting speed, a script written for moments like this, when disaster hovered inches away but never touched. Outside, tension lingered like smoke after fire, while inside the crowd roared. oblivious to victory on the field. The handler exhaled, shoulders sagging slightly, but the dog remained vigilant, nose twitching, gaze sharp. They had found it in time. A catastrophe averted in the span of seconds, yet the stadium knew nothing. No applause for the discovery, no cheer for the guardian who had unmasked the hidden danger. Just silence, steady breathing, and a calm return to shadows where heroes rarely stand. The canine's tongue lolled, chest rising with the rhythm of heavy exertion, but the leash kept it poised in silence. Around them, a wave of joy broke as fireworks lit the sky, painting the steel beams in crimson and gold. No one clapped for the dog. No one knew the invisible cliff they had just stepped back from. The handler rubbed his partner's shoulder, a fleeting acknowledgement swallowed by the frenzy of celebration. For the crowd, tonight's story was the score, the game, the roar of victory. For the dog, the story was different, measured in sense and instincts. In the moment its nose had drawn a line between chaos and safety, the stadium's heart thundered unaware, while the true pulse of survival beat quietly in the shadows, carried not by applause, but by panting breaths of a four-legged sentinel.
Hours earlier, before tension thickened the night, the stadium pulsed with simple joy. Floodlights buzzed awake as twilight sank, painting the sky in deep violet. Vendors shouted above each other, their trays stacked with popcorn bags, glistening sodas, and sizzling hot dogs. Music thundered from towering speakers, vibrating through concrete into thousands of restless feet. Painted faces gleamed, flags waved, drums echoed through tunnels. Children tugged parents towards seats, laughter spilling over steel railings. It was a night of spectacle, a theater of competition, where danger seemed impossibly distant. Yet beneath the vibrant tide of humanity, silent watchers walked. Dogs padded at handlers' sides, their presence hidden in plain sight. They weren't part of the show, but the unseen framework holding it together. While the crowd sang, while the game loomed, the invisible guardians waited quietly, sensing the fragile balance beneath the spectacle. Through the turnstiles, a pair stepped in unnoticed. Handler steady, uniform pressed, leash coiled in practiced grip. At his side, the canine moved like shadow, scanning without eyes, breathing in the world's hidden layers. While fans streamed past with painted cheeks and buzzing voices, the dog's nose dissected the air. Sweat, grease, hot dogs, beer, perfume, and something else, faint and fleeting, brushed aside by stronger scents. Their walk was ordinary to anyone watching, just another security check blending into routine. Yet every paw step was work, every sniff a calculation, every shift of ear a silent code. The handler trusted without question, knowing the dog's instincts carved deeper than human sense ever could. They passed unnoticed under banners and floodlights, but their mission stretched beyond sight, to guard thousands who would never look their way and never know how close danger might lurk tonight.
Crowds are both celebration and risk. 50,000 souls pressed shoulder to shoulder, their joy amplifying, their noise a shield against awareness. Stadium walls rattled with chants, but within those vibrations lived fragility. One spark of panic could shatter order into stampede. One hidden danger could tilt joy into chaos. Most came to lose themselves in the spectacle, to trust in unseen safety measures, invisible layers of vigilance. But not all dangers show themselves in plain sight. Some linger disguised, tucked into shadows, placed where eyes fail and senses dull. This is the silent truth of mass gatherings. Beneath laughter lies vulnerability. The dog's paws tapped against concrete, each step a question, each breath a search. While the crowd roared upward, blind to the fragility beneath their fun, the animal's senses lingered downward, deep, probing the invisible cracks where danger might slip through. From high in the stands, the glow of stadium lights shimmered like a crown, reflecting in a sea of restless eyes. Joy was the surface, thick and glittering, but currents shifted deeper down. The canine padded alongside its handler, eyes unblinking, ears tuned, each step tuned to an invisible rhythm. It wasn't drawn by the game's pageantry or the fireworks promised at halftime. It was listening, always listening, through scent, through sound, through vibration. The handler walked steady, trusting the bond forged over years, knowing that what humans missed, his partner caught with absolute clarity. Tonight was no different. Somewhere beyond the popcorn smoke and painted faces, an anomaly waited. Only one nose among thousands would know. Only one silent signal could draw the line between safety and disaster. While the crowd chanted names of players, another name, unspoken, unknown, prepared to decide the night's true story.
The dog's gait faltered mid-stride, smooth rhythm snapping into rigidity. Its nostrils quivered, chest expanding deeper than before. The handler stopped without question, reading the tension instantly. The leash stiffened, vibrating with silent urgency. Around them, fans moved as a single tide, oblivious, spilling beer, laughing loudly, singing off-key. Yet within this normal chaos, something had shifted. The canine's head turned sharply, ears pricked, eyes darting, not searching visually, but triangulating scent. The handler's pulse spiked, but he remained stone-faced, hiding tension under years of discipline. A faint scent had triggered this change, one too faint for human perception. To the handler, the subtle cues were louder than the crowd's thunder. It wasn't hesitation, it wasn't fatigue. It was a declaration that something nearby was wrong. The world surged forward joyfully, while for two silent guardians, the night took on a new gravity. Without hesitation, the handler's body lowered, shoulders squared, eyes narrowing along the dog's line of focus. Years of training turned instinct into protocol. One silent hand signal, one shift in posture, and the dog responded in kind, nose tilting, chest surging forward with renewed urgency. Together they moved, weaving between strangers, slipping through clusters of fans as if invisible. The handler knew how easily subtle cues could be missed. To the crowd, this was routine, a dog wandering, a man following. But to those who understood, this was the beginning of a silent hunt. Every step carried weight, every pause was a calculation. The handler didn't need to see what lay ahead. The dog's movements told the story, wrote the map. His job was not to question, but to follow. The stadium around them blurred into white noise. The hunt had begun.
The canine surged forward, tugging the leash with strength beyond its frame. The handler followed, body weaving through dense waves of people, movements calculated but swift. Music from the loudspeakers thumped against his ribs, blending with cheers that spiked like sudden thunderclaps. The dog ignored it all. Its nose cut through layers of scent, searching for the one thread out of thousands that didn't belong. The handler kept his eyes locked on his partner's back, trusting the movements more than any sound, any sight. Each tug carried purpose, each pause demanded patience. The crowd jostled, spilling food, shouting names, brushing shoulders against the silent pursuit. Yet the dog was relentless, a living compass drawn to something invisible. Every second mattered, every step brought them closer. While the crowd celebrated blindly, danger drew nearer.
The stadium's rhythm played on, unaware of the parallel rhythms stalking within it. The dog's sudden pivot dragged the handler toward a concession stand. The scent intensified near stacked trash bins, overflowing with grease-soaked wrappers and plastic cups. The handler's muscles tensed, heart racing as he crouched beside the dog, scanning the pile. The canine circled, nose darting through the chaos of smells, claws scratching briefly against metal. For a moment, adrenaline surged. Was this it? Was the danger buried here in discarded remains? A pause, a deep breath, a tilt of the dog's head, and the answer came. The intensity slipped, the focus drifted. Just waste, just noise. The handler exhaled hard, disguising it as routine. False alarm. But this wasn't a failure. It was part of the process, part of separating chaos from truth. The crowd kept surging, spilling laughter and soda. The dog shook once, ears flicking back into alignment, ready to resume the search.
The canine shifted sharply, abandoning the trash without hesitation. Its nose cut through the noise, locking on to the true thread once more. The handler followed, unshaken because trust was absolute. He knew distractions were part of the chase, that clarity required persistence. The dog pulled harder now, muscles taut, movements sharper, more deliberate. Something was closer. Something was narrowing. They slipped through aisles of fans waving plastic flags, slid past ushers distracted by cheers. The handler's eyes narrowed, senses heightening in parallel to his partner's urgency. Sweat traced down his temple, though the air was cool. The leash vibrated with the weight of decision, every tug echoing with invisible tension. They were no longer circling. They were converging. The true path lay ahead, waiting to be revealed. While the crowd cheered louder, destiny drew tighter, funneled by a nose that would not be deceived. In a split-second vision, the handler's mind betrayed him with an image of failure. The crowd, screaming not in celebration but in terror. The stadium's steel trembling under stampede, footsteps pounding like thunder, children crying, bodies pressing against exits too narrow, smoke curling through floodlights, panic feeding panic until order dissolved completely. The vision faded as quickly as it appeared, but its weight lingered, heavier than the leash in his hand. That was what this moment meant. That was what laid balanced on the edge of every sniff, every turn, every pause. What the dog found or didn't would decide whether tonight ended in victory or nightmare. The handler steadied his breath, eyes sharpening, muscles coiled. The dog didn't see the vision, didn't imagine chaos. It only followed truth in the air. And perhaps that was why it never faltered. Instinct didn't second-guess. It only revealed.
The handler's thoughts flickered backward, unbidden, to training fields bathed in early dawn. Hours spent under harsh commands, drills repeated until muscles screamed. The dog, then younger, bounding through obstacles, nose buried in fields of sense planted to confuse and mislead. Time after time, failure sharpened into precision. Nights spent in lonely repetition, handler and dog learning each other's smallest movements, smallest tells. A twitch of an ear meant a direction. A single pause meant danger. The bond had been forged through sweat, patience, and endless hours when the world was asleep. Now, amid the storm of the crowd, those invisible lessons carried them. The dog's stillness spoke louder than any siren. The handler's calm proved stronger than the noise of 50,000 voices. The years of invisible labor came alive in this single night, binding man and dog into one shared instinct. Another memory surfaced, softer this time. The dog as a pup, clumsy paws tripping over training cones, tail wagging too wildly for discipline. The handler's frustration softened by the pup's eager eyes, a bond planted not in command, but in affection. Long hours blurred into years, transforming playful energy into disciplined power. Yet beneath the steel of training lived the warmth of trust, a connection deeper than words, deeper than orders. That trust thrived now, unseen in the stadium chaos. While the crowd saw just a uniform and a dog, the truth was a partnership built on shared breath, shared resolve. The handler didn't need to question. The dog didn't need to doubt. Each had become the other's shadow, the other's anchor. In that bond lived the quiet promise that tonight would not be the night disaster claimed victory. Together, they moved forward.
The stadium erupted again, a wave of cheers rising so loud it shook concrete. Fans high-fived strangers, spilling drinks, hugging, screaming victory. A touchdown lit the scoreboard, flashing bold numbers and bright neon. None noticed the silent figures weaving beneath their feet. None guessed at the tension thrumming through an invisible hunt. They were wrapped in spectacle, oblivious to the razor edge that had cut so close. The contrast was surreal. Above, chaos of joy. Below, precision of survival. Children laughed as the dog brushed past, thinking it just another mascot or passing pet. Parents never paused their cheers. They would never know that in those same seconds, the thin line between safety and tragedy had been drawn, held, and tested. The game was their story. The search was another story, one they'd never hear, one that would change the night forever. The dog slowed, its body stiffened, movements sharpening into focus. The handler recognized the signal instantly, the narrowing spiral, the reduction of randomness into precision. The canine's head dropped, nostrils pulling air in rapid bursts, as if painting an invisible map. Its paws tapped deliberate paths, closing distance inch by inch. The handler's grip tightened, every sense screaming alert. This was it. The approach was ending. The target was close. The roar of the stadium above seemed to recede, dimming in the handler's ears as adrenaline surged louder. Sweat collected, pulse hammered, but he stayed steady, each step aligned with the dog's instincts. Then, without warning, the canine froze, sat firmly, eyes fixed forward. It scratched once at the ground, a signal sharp and undeniable. The handler's breath caught. This was the call. This was the moment the unseen revealed itself at last.
The canine's body was still, but its signal rang louder than any voice. The sit, the scratch, the locked gaze, all unmistakable. Years of drills had condensed into this single posture, a silent alarm no human ear could hear, but every handler could understand. The handler's body stiffened, pulse quickening, but his face remained stone. He raised his hand in a coded gesture, sharp and precise. Around him, fans cheered obliviously, beer sloshing from plastic cups, faces painted with joy. But beneath the flood of distraction, a quiet storm ignited. The handler trusted without hesitation. The dog had found it. A threat hidden in plain sight, cloaked beneath noise, revealed by instinct sharper than technology. The world above spun in its oblivious orbit, while below, two silent figures had redrawn fate. The sit was the line. The scratch was the verdict. Danger had been uncovered. The signal spread like electricity. Security moved fast, silent at first, but then with deliberate urgency. Black uniforms converged, boots striking concrete in unison. Fans nearby barely noticed it, mistaking it for routine patrol. But each step carried gravity. Each gesture was part of a well-practiced choreography. The handler stood firm, one hand steady on the leash, the other guiding with sharp movements. The canine stayed still, unshakable, a living beacon pointing to the unseen. A surge of coordinated motion followed. Cases opened, gloves snapped tight, radios whispered orders.
The team moved as one body, intent sharpened into a single goal: containment. No time for hesitation, no room for error. The noise of the game thundered on above, drowning out the sound of safety being stitched quietly below. While thousands cheered victory on the field, victory of another kind was unfolding in the shadows.
Gloved hands lifted the object from where it had been concealed, tucked into shadows where eyes would never wander. It was ordinary to the untrained, almost invisible against the noise of the stadium. But to the dog, it had been a signal screaming through layers of distraction. The handler's breath eased slightly, though his posture stayed rigid. The object was carried away quickly, secured into an armored case. The danger was neutralized. Lives had been spared without ever knowing they were in peril. The canine blinked slowly, chest rising, nostrils quivering as if double-checking the air. Its work was done, but its vigilance remained. The handler gave a subtle nod, unspoken gratitude etched in the gesture. Above them, lights flashed brighter as the crowd sang louder, chasing victory. Below, the night's truest victory was secured quietly, without fanfare, without recognition. When the object was gone and the urgency dissolved, the handler knelt beside his partner. The dog panted heavily, fur dampened with exertion, eyes wide yet calm. Without words, the handler pressed his forehead to the dog's head, a gesture hidden in shadows. It wasn't celebration, it was communion, acknowledgement of trust that had saved thousands. Years of training, nights of discipline, bonds forged in silence had funneled into this moment. The handler exhaled, shoulders heavy but steady. The dog's tail twitched faintly, a subdued victory signal, not the wag of play, but the flick of accomplishment. Together they lingered in a quiet pause, invisible to the world above them. Around them, the crowd erupted again for reasons entirely different. Fireworks cracked overhead, cheers reached peak pitch. But for two guardians in the shadows, the true celebration was simply breath shared in survival. The game raged on. Players sprinted, referees blew whistles, and fans erupted with every shift in the score. Flags waved like ocean waves, voices collided into a thunderous choir. None of them knew. None would ever know. The crowd existed in a bubble of joy, their story untouched, uninterrupted. They cheered for touchdowns, for halftime spectacles, for fleeting moments of sports glory. Beneath their feet, in tunnels and shadows, a different victory had already been claimed. The contrast was stark, almost surreal, the oblivion of thousands stacked against the vigilance of one. They would leave the stadium later with hoarse voices and smiling faces, unaware they had been balanced on the edge of catastrophe. For them, tonight was a memory of joy. For one handler and his partner, it was something far heavier, proof that vigilance never sleeps, not even in celebration. The canine's body eased, the tension draining from muscles coiled too long. Its tongue hung loose, panting steady now, a rhythm of release. Tail low, eyes softer, it moved at its handler's side once more. No medals, no spotlight, just calm return to duty. To strangers, it was just another patrol, a dog on routine. But to the handler, it was the night's truest hero, a sentinel who had sniffed out what machines and men could not. The game roared louder overhead, but here, silence felt louder, richer, deeper. The handler walked forward, one hand brushing briefly against fur, unseen but deliberate. Mission complete. No applause awaited, no headlines would capture this. The dog knew none of it. All it knew was the scent had been found, the threat removed, the bond honored. Quietly, unnoticed, the hero faded back into shadow.
In every stadium, every gathering, guardians walk unnoticed. Their paws press against concrete, Their noses slice through layers of scent invisible to human sense. They don't crave attention, and they don't receive it. Their work lives in shadows, their victories written in disasters that never happened. The handler walks beside them, bound by loyalty, carrying a bond forged in silence. They aren't the stars on the field or the voices over the speakers. They are the quiet shield that holds chaos at bay. Tonight was only one story, one instance among countless unseen. For the crowd, the night will be remembered for a score. For the guardians, it will be remembered for survival. Their names may never be known, their faces may never be seen, but without them, celebration could crumble in seconds. These are the unsung heroes beyond the bark. The danger removed tonight was not unique. Each stadium, each concert, each festival carries its own hidden weight. Crowds bring joy, but also fragility, a truth too often ignored. The guardians know this. They live it in every shift, every patrol, every pause in which the world depends on senses sharper than its own. Tonight's story fades into tomorrow's headlines, forgotten by the many who never knew they were in danger. But the cycle repeats. Every event, every gathering, every night. Somewhere, a canine stands still in a sea of noise. Somewhere, a handler braces for the unknown. The work is endless, the vigilance relentless, because safety is never permanent. It must be earned again and again. Tonight was saved by instinct. Tomorrow will depend on it again. The story doesn't end. It lingers, waiting to unfold at the next crowd's roar.
They are not performers, not soldiers of fame. They are the invisible shield. Man and dog tethered by trust, sharper together than either alone. Their bond is the weapon, their discipline the armor. They are not celebrated because their victories are silent, but their silence is what makes celebration possible. The canine's nose drags truth out of hiding. The handler interprets signals, and together they stop what eyes miss, what machines overlook. They are guardians without applause, protectors without spotlight, a defense line built of instinct and loyalty. For the crowd, the game was the highlight. For the guardians, the highlight was survival. The shield held, the balance never tipped. And though the world moves on without knowing, the truth remains. Every joy in a crowd depends on shadows standing strong, unnoticed but unbroken. The invisible shield never falters, it only waits. The crowd roared long into the night, voices spilling into streets, fireworks scattering ash across the sky. For them, the victory was measured in points scored, names cheered, songs sung until throats gave out. But the true victory lived elsewhere, quiet, unseen. It lived in the bond between handler and dog. In the moment a single sniff redrew the night's fate. No applause honored it, no headlines captured it. But without it, celebration would have dissolved into chaos. As the stadium emptied, the guardians slipped away, fading back into anonymity. The night ended in joy because vigilance never rested. While the scoreboard told one story, the shadows told another. And though the world may forget, the truth stands eternal. While the crowd roared for the game, the real triumph belonged to a silent guardian on 4 legs.